the appetite for aggressive stakes grows with success, and it would certainly those in Poland and Baltic states and Romania who are closer to Russia than we are not reassured by that at all, because all those states, of course, were part of the Russian sphere of influence after World War II. It's not as if these are countries which have never come under Moscow's domination. So that they are worried, and I think rightly so. That doesn't mean that Russia is very likely to do so, and after this war they will for a while be exhausted, but it doesn't mean I think Europeans will have to work together to deter such an invasion.
There is always a danger in an election that we're going to see people focusing on domestic issues, and we've seen right across the globe, I think, a sense of concern about international engagement and then sometimes a pulling back. The real problem in the United States is obviously going to be what happens with Donald Trump, because his utterances yesterday were absolutely extraordinary. And if we can't rely on the United States to be giving at least some support to Ukraine, then
is that where he said, if you don't pay up, I'll urge Russia to just get in there and steamroll?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's for existing NATO members. So it's not just a question of Ukraine, but it's actually our close allies in Poland and the Baltic states who really feel there's an existential threat. And what is being said in the United States is dangerous for the whole continent and for NATO. So it means that the United Kingdom and others are really going to have to step up to the plate more, even though, of course, we have an election as well.
Malcolm, is part of the issue that when President Zelenskyy of Ukraine says it's not just about Ukraine fighting for its survival, it's Ukraine being on the front line of Western values, quite a number of Western countries who don't really feel it and don't feel they can sell that to their electorate?
Well, I think actually European countries have done a remarkable job in selling it to their electorates, and with one or two exceptions like Hungary, there's been a big effort across Europe to provide support to Ukraine. I think the biggest problem we have right now is exactly what Julie pointed to, that even under President Biden his White House, the Congress, the Republicans in Congress are blocking further aid to Ukraine. And the lesson, I think, from that is that Europeans are going to have to do more because even under a Democratic president, we cannot rely on the United States to provide the volume of aid which Ukraine needs. You know, I think a few months ago, we were talking about the possibility of Ukrainian breakthrough, Ukraine regaining most of its territory it's lost. I'm afraid this year we're looking at the real possibility of Ukraine losing this war and Russia making many more territorial gains, even before that a new American president takes office. So it's a very serious situation indeed.
And Malcolm, do you say that despite what President Putin said in his interview with Tucker Carlson, in which he basically gave a history lesson and said, Ukraine is us and we are Ukraine. I'm not interested in Poland or anywhere else unless they attack us. You're not reassured by that?
I'm not reassured by that, no. And I think who knows what will happen in future, but the appetite for aggressive stakes grows with success. And it would certainly those in Poland and Baltic states and Romania who are closer to Russia than we are not reassured by that at all, because all those states, of course, were part of the Russian sphere of influence after World War II. It's not as if these are countries which have never come under Moscow's domination. So that they are worried, and I think rightly so. That doesn't mean that Russia is very likely to do so, and after this war they will for a while be exhausted, but it doesn't mean I think Europeans will have to work together to deter such an invasion. The key thing is Russia militarily is the single most powerful state in Europe. Other states can only deter Russia if they work together If we are separate, then Russia can pick us off one by one.
And the question is, how well are these European countries working together? USA notwithstanding, Julie, because NATO Secretary General has called on Europe to increase its arms production to support Ukraine, and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said they're running out; they need more support. How would you assess the situation at the moment? How much more military support is needed?
I think those calls are absolutely right, that broadly the commitment from European allies has been there. There was a brief wobble in Poland, but the change of government in Poland now means that there is the commitment again. But what I think we have failed to do separately and collectively is think adequately about procurement of ammunition, of replenishing stockpiles. And it's a particular problem in the UK outlined in the Defence Committee report last week. But it's true elsewhere that we haven't been swift enough to get these supply pipelines going. And we need to think very carefully about how we work with the defence industrial base to make sure that we are able to produce enough equipment as swiftly as possible.
Malcolm, to what extent would you say the focus on Gaza has distracted from the war in Ukraine, and to the extent that President Putin has been able to take advantage of it?
Well, I think there has been some such effect. It's been felt mainly in the United States, I think, rather than Europe, because the United States is providing a great deal of assistance to Israel, military assistance, and some of the systems they're provided, for example, for air defense, are systems that are also needed by Kyiv. And you're clearly also seeing that effect in the US Congress, where I think support for Israel is stronger than it is for Ukraine. And then there is China, of course. So the United States military machine is seeking to operate on three fronts at once: Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And the American defense budget is not actually growing very rapidly. It's growing less rapidly than in Europe, although from a much higher starting level. So the Pentagon is stretched, and you feel that in the American political system, where increasingly, especially in the right, an argument that they should be focusing more on their own border with Mexico rather than their global role. So a sense of American exhaustion, I think, is playing into this, and the Gaza war certainly is contributing to that.
And Julie, what do you make of President Zelenskyy getting rid of his commander-in-chief, Valery Zelenskyy? How concerning was that?
I'm not sufficiently close to understanding what's going on in Ukraine to have a sense of, was this the right decision? I mean, President Zelenskyy has clearly made a whole set of new appointments, presumably in the context of feeling that Ukraine isn't making the sort of progress that he was hoping, which goes back to Malcolm's point earlier about changing expectations and a changing sense of what Ukraine is actually going to be able to achieve. So I think perhaps it's a sense of frustration for Zelenskyy. Whether it's the right decision, maybe I'll throw that back to Malcolm.
Okay, Malcolm, what do you think?
I'm certainly not going to comment on whether this is a right decision or not. What is clear is that we had very considerable expectations of significant Ukrainian advances in the last summer, and they failed to materialize. And it's very dangerous in those situations to start casting around for somebody to blame, for a scapegoat. What's most important, I think, is the Ukrainians are united, and we're united in their support in what is going to be a very difficult year. If Ukraine loses this, then the consequences will be felt across Europe. There will be millions of refugees, large number of civilians being killed by Russian-occupied forces. European security will never be the same again. And for that to happen at the same time as we might have an American president who clearly is not committed to European security is going to make us all think very radically, I think, about what we need to do to protect our own security.
All right. Malcolm Chalmers and Julie Smith, thank you very much indeed for being with us. More on how the political drama is playing out in the US after midday with us here on Times Radio. And a reminder that you can get all the expert, in-depth analysis you need of the war in Ukraine over on our YouTube channel.